Well, people need no introduction for this guy. This is, it's interesting. I don't know. We'll talk about whatever it is. So I haven't posted, I haven't opened up the Randos links for a while just because I've been busy. And so I opened it up this week. And usually there's two slots and only one guy signed up. And it was our own Upcycle. So congratulations. You won the lottery this time. Um, you are an interesting and unique person in the corner because you have sort of a role that nobody else quite has. And now we're both wearing denim Denny here. So but it's hard to describe exactly the role you have in the corner because you are in some ways, I don't know quite how to figure it out, but you obviously are. I see you as the biggest encourager in the corner. That's how I see you. So
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It means a lot to me, actually. Yeah, yeah. Over the years, people call me different names and have given me different titles. Let's say. So um, I remember at some point I actually got into the trouble of writing all of those down. And I think the best one that I really liked is the one of the encourager. That's the one that suits me. I think the best because let me try to explain a bit how I see my role. Let's say within this little corner. First of all, the I love this space, and I really love it in the term that in the following manner, basically. It is a fellowship and it is grassroots levels up. And that actually gives me a lot of hope because almost a decade ago, I tried to do the very same thing. And my model was a bit different, let's say. I started from the physical ground. Like me and many volunteers um, from different age groups, like from teenagers up to people that they were well up in their 70s, let's say. They helped me and a very small group of friends to transform an urban space that was an abandoned parking lot into an ecological park. So we used all those upcycled materials and those ideas, let's say, and we actually created a space. And we even had a lot of people coming, sharing their experiences, spending time together, sharing stories, doing activities. Let's say some of them said maybe it's a good idea to have like an actual something that has to do with physical activity. So there was one Wing Chun, basically a martial artist that came there and started offering these lessons to others. Another lady came and she was making, handcrafts over there. So there was a lot of nice sense of fellowship. And almost every night we had a big fire in the space, so people were gathering around, and because it was basically on purpose in the middle of the city, and a lot of tourists also came, but also a lot of locals, let's say. So it became something like a small hub. And then the idea arose that if we have this on the grounds community here in our local area, because a lot of people they were telling us why you don't take this idea elsewhere. Like people they wanted to take it to Barcelona, for example. And we said to them, yeah, it's an open model. You can actually do it. It's not that like we have the IPs for this. It's open for everyone to replicate. And then we had this idea of pushing it a bit into the digital space and create this digital upcycling, let's say, concept. And people basically started utilizing um, the tools that they already had in their possession, like for example, their smartphones and all of that. They were taking Anyway, they were taking funny clips of their pets every time their dog or their cat was doing something funny. So the idea was like, since we don't have any donors for this, maybe we can, instead of accepting donations, let's say, like monetary donations, in order to gather money and build an actual space, maybe we can accept small videos that we can then try to monetize globally. So we can assign back to that community that set amount, let's say, and help that community to create, let's say, their own ecological park and all of that. And that was a really beautiful idea. It really caught up. There was a lot of interest in various places from, as I said before, from Catalonia, Barcelona, from a city called San Juan in Argentina. And slowly, we were trying to, allocate those monetization back to the actual community. And of course, we try to keep part of it back in order to pay the volunteers and make it sustainable. Um, but life happens, and the dream lasted for approximately 3, 4 years. And at the very moment that we were trying to, let's say, take it up a level and actually scale it up, let's say, um, some things happen. Like we had some internal conflicts between that small group, let's say, that had nothing to do with the idea. It had to do with personal conflicts more than anything else. Um, and then, at least in my case, I lost my father, and I got like into a different, completely different mode of being and doing things. So I decided to pause, to press that button. And a lot of people over the years, they came back and kept telling me, you have to revive that idea. That was beautiful. And I said to myself, okay, maybe one day I will actually do that. But when I saw what was going on YouTube specifically with this little corner of the internet, it actually resonated deeply with me. And I realized that, you know what, I can also be part of this. And I can, in fact, I can play the role of the encourager that I never got, let's say, with my own project. So, things work in mysterious ways sometimes, but yeah, I still find it beautiful that I am part of this space, let's say.
Talk to me about so you started this, you live on Cyprus, I know, and Cyprus, of course, is where I'm just looking up it on is where Mount Olympus is. So people should know that. The home of the gods. Um, what what about what you did is sort of connected with your culture? I mean,
Okay,
why was that resonant and why did it sort of catch on the way it did?
yeah. First of all, because we are an island, we have the following particularity here. If somebody does something, their neighbor also wants to do it. So if somebody, let's say, and this goes both ways, in a good way and maybe in a not so good way. Let me just elaborate a bit on the not so good way part first. So, for example, let's say you have a street and somebody, an entrepreneur, sees the opportunity to go and invest, let's say, and open a convenience store on one side of the road. And business goes very well. It actually tries to satisfy that particular need in the market. And all of a sudden, after 1, 2, maybe 3 at most months, somebody else opens up exactly on the opposite side of that convenience store. And what this is a recurring theme. So what happens is that the second guy thought like, hey, I can take half of that pie, and but what happens in reality is that they both lose. So it is not sustainable anymore, the model. And what happens is that they usually close down at the very same time. And then history repeats. Now, in a good way, in the good manner, is that like maybe we can actually create an idea here. And if it's a good one, it will be picked up by the very same mechanism. And if it's something like, um, I will be using like a slightly mimetic term here. You know, we have this notion of the memes spreading as if they are viruses. In a good sense, if you had a good idea, let's say, that spreads, you can call it a social fake. So it actually works in a pretty beneficial, benefactor, let's say, manner. So yeah, that was the typical characteristics that worked here. And in most cases, when you are dealing with social enterprises, that's all you need. You need one good example, the exemplar, and then you can actually replicate it to other cities within your country, or even to other cities outside of your country, to other nations. So that was our case here.
So in the case of the corner, Chad keeps asking, where are there other corners and where are there other similar things? And, I've found a couple things that are like Megan Dom does something similar to what I did with my sister's retreat. Chad found the welders in Canada. My wife actually was telling me about a minimalist mom channel. But part of, it's been interesting with the corner that um, as people sort of copy what we do, it sort of hasn't split. It's sort of made it grow,
Yeah,
which is really interesting. Why is that just because of the nature of the internet, or even though there are sort of little exile factions that I won't name because they get prickly when I name them. What do you
yeah,
think the dynamic is in terms of the corner with respect to this question of growth and multiplication?
yeah. Okay, first of all, I really believe that basically recently I was listening to uh, Neil talking with T. Grogan
Yep.
on the Friday morning nameless chats channel. And you know T. Grogan, it's a very interesting particular case. And the guy is tries to be like, not tries, he really is a pragmatist. So he likes to understand things like in the sense of grounding things into reality. So one of the things I remember him saying, it was like, can you scientifically prove, let's say, that this little corner is actually functioning or something like that? Which it's a very peculiar type of reasoning, but I gave it a thought, and I even shared this in the hive mind. Excuse me. So there is something called in science, there is something called figures of merit. And actually, it could be very useful in evaluating and even enhancing, let's say, a virtual community or a semi-virtual community as TLC. Because TLC, one of these beautiful characteristics is that is it's semi-virtual, because you also meet face to face. Like I'm coming all the way from Cyprus to meet you, and the rest. So there is something there. Now, does it make sense to quantify it? Well, Not exactly, although some people like Clara, the sociologist, is studying it, all this in terms of actual academic research. And because I am well versed, let's say, in that very same domain, and I have this personal experience with social enterprises and initiatives, I offer this notion of the figures of merit in the following sense. For example, imagine this: we have engagement rate. Okay, this is a measure. It is a measure, let's say, a figure of merit that can actually um, uh, capture the level of participation and the interaction even that is going on within TLC. Um, isn't it true that TLC, especially during the last let's say 6 months, high in engagement? And in another way, if it is high in engagement, does that not indicate that this fellowship is actually really vibrant and active? So, that's one idea. Another figure of merit might be something that I've heard you describe in your own way, and I really believe that we can also include it under this figure of merit list, let's say for TLC. Um, Member retention. People they come, they go, and they keep returning, coming back. So that's actually very, very interesting because, first of all, not a lot of them leave. So if we were a company, let's say, tracking down this particular metric, of course, high retention is what we are looking for, let's say, because it is a great indicator that people in our community they are satisfied, let's say, with what is going on. And another thing will be attendance rate. So you can see this like I go and see some very big YouTube channels that they have a lot of people watching and all of that. You get lost in the comments. There is no interaction. So maybe there is attendance or the attendance rate is really high, but the actual interaction and the potential for building this relationship or continuing, let's say, the evolution of the one-to-one or one-to-many relationships or the many-to-one, to put it in that particular frame, it's something that I can see happening, especially with the smaller channels, let's say.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
And it's interesting because I think culturally everyone sort of looks to the size of one channel, whereas
mhm,
actually I like the fact that we have a lot of smaller channels because in
yes.
those channels there's differentiation. And so I just made um, yesterday I just made sort of the first draft. I've been working on these ideas for a while actually. And usually with me, if I work on something, I work on it a bit at a time. And I'll just let me see. I can just share my screen. There we go. I'll just do this one.
The article.
Yeah, I created this little TLC starter kit.
Yeah.
And of course, I have the Bridges of Meaning Discord server, which is, and I think it's actually sort of a not a bug, but a feature that it's a little hard to get on the Discord server. You don't want it to be too easy. You want to give it a sense of exclusivity, even though it's a
Mhm.
very flat thing. Anybody can get on a Discord server. A few
Yeah.
instructions for there. And then I had to do something that I've been resisting for a while, which some people I've been highly criticized for resisting it, which is to make a list. And part of the problem with a list is the lists are always incomplete, and you always have to sort of choose who's in, who's out, and that sort of enters into then the dynamic of selection and even discipline with respect to those lists. So then I decided on this list at least to make a list of channels that often do what Jacob Federecci sort of innovated for us, the Just Chatting, StreamYard, and so I made this list. And this morning when I was talking to Clara, I realized that, oh, I didn't include Clara, and oh, I didn't include Mark D. Parker, and there's probably some other channels out there that I didn't include. And so for me, this blog that I have, leadingchurch.com, which I've had for years, this for me is sort of a just about everything for me is a sandbox to play around, with the possible exception of my church, but my church is getting to be more and more of a sandbox. So it's, you know, I'm we always have this tension, and your story about, your upcycle club is a great example of it, where on one hand, people like growth because they have a sense of validation in growth. Because if something you like goes viral and it gets liked by a lot of other people, there's a sense of validation and community in that. But growth always comes with its own dangers. And so you're always having to sort of evaluate, are the dangers of growth and the risks of dangers of growth worth it compared to the benefits of the small? And so, actually, a lot of structures, and this is very big in the church world, especially in the Protestant church world, for where everything is always sort of new. And I mean, you can sort of make a Protestant church with not much more difficulty than you can make a YouTube channel. And so churches are always popping up, and people are trying things. And so I'm very attuned to the questions of scale and growth and the losses that come with this. And so often I remember I was part of the executive director search team for our denomination about a decade and a half ago, and the denomination was looking for a new executive director. And part of what we had to do was go talk to high-profile ministers and people in the denomination that might be interested. And I remember I was talking to one of the most successful church planters in my denomination, who had planted a church, which was the dream of what everyone else wanted, because within a couple of years, his church was over 1,000. There were NFL football players that were going to his church. There were people running for U.S. Senate that were going to his church. This was, in the Christian Reformed Church, this was a very big deal, but it was sort of kept a little quiet. Some of the churches with other CRC churches in driving distance were not happy about this because they were siphoning off members, young, active members from their church. And so, in some ways, this was kingdom come for this guy. And I was talking to him just as he was walking away from this success story that he had planted. And I knew he wasn't going to be interested in this job of executive director, but someone threw out his name. So I thought, I'm going to take this opportunity to have a conversation with him. And he said to me, I planted a church that was a mile wide and an inch deep. And after, I don't know, 10, 15 years or so, he just couldn't stand it anymore. He just couldn't take it anymore. And I've seen this so often with successful people, whether it be in church planting or other things, they leave their success and they'd rather be in something which is, 100 feet wide and a mile deep or a
Yeah,
mile high, because there's something so much more enriching and lasting and fulfilling about that thickness. And there's obviously a relationship between breadth and thickness. They say still waters run deep. And so I wonder how that bounces off of you with respect to your upcycle story, and that
yeah,
story of that community, both with growth and then with collapse.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, first of all, as I was listening you sharing that specific story, I said to myself that would make an excellent chapter in Paul's book. Uh, Leaving that aside, yeah, no, it deeply resonates with me, because in a way I am somewhat a very peculiar type of a serial entrepreneur. I get attached to my companies as my babies. So I have very little, let's say, I really don't want to let them go. And I honestly, in my professional career, I've tried all the different models. Like my first company was like, first of all, I started two companies. One of them we were four partners with equal shares, and in the other we were two at various stages, like over the years. Different formations came to be. Like I've tried everything, like from four to three to two, and at the end I was left alone, and I really at that stage, let's say, it it felt both good but also not good. Because I was able to do exactly and follow my heart and my vision because I am more altruistic, let's say, in my aptitude than my fellows, let's say, over in those initiatives. But what happened is like it's not that I was correct, the correct one, because you also need the hard rationalists, the materialists that they pull you down and they say, no, you don't need to reinvest everything, or you don't need to donate everything. You need to keep things back in order to, for profit and to. It's the ethical purpose of the enterprise to share profits to the shareholders and all of that. So there is always this sense of balance, and. Yeah, I really understand that. Like you can try to build something that runs deep, that goes for decades, let's say. And at some other instances, you can try something and it just doesn't feel right, and then you prefer to just go back to to the laboratory and sketch everything once again. And maybe this is also the thrill. I am not discounting that factor. Like some people, they really like that thrill. Some others, they follow a very more detached, let's say, hard rationalistic model. Like for example, we are gonna build these startups up, and we are gonna sell them. So that's it. We are gonna build an app, for example. We are gonna get 1 million users, no money, no profit, but we are gonna sell that user base. I will never do that. I will never sell my people, So yeah, yeah, that
Well,
resonates with me. Yeah,
it gets to me, it gets to the question of the satisfaction of the human heart. I mean, Augustine of Hippo famously said, our hearts are restless until they find their rest in thee, meaning God. And this to me gets into the question of what on earth do we mean by God? What on earth does that word mean? Because recently in a video I talked about the definition of God as that which ultimately and completely satisfies. And what's interesting in I don't know if it's so true of European culture or Cyprian culture, but in American culture, there's a deeply American culture is very much a culture of driving and searching, and it's a very aggressive culture. And people want to become famous, or they want to become wealthy, or they want to become powerful. And that's a big part of American culture. But it's also the case that you find people who become movie stars or wealthy or entrepreneurs, and they get all the way up the top of the ladder that they have oriented their entire life by, and they get up at the top and they have a meaning crisis
yeah,
because that ladder was their meaning.
yeah,
And now suddenly they realized they got to the top of the ladder and they're still not satisfied. They still haven't found what they're looking for. And they don't even know exactly what it is they're looking for. And I don't think that's just American. I think that's deeply human. I think, when in Ecclesiastes, um, it says you have put eternity in our hearts. That translation to me evokes that idea that humanity is always restless, and we find little plateaus of satisfaction, but in this world we cannot finally be satisfied. It's a deeply interesting thing about us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I fully agree. First of all, um, I have this idea mainly from the movies, but also from the magazines that I used to be subscribed to for many years, like Harvard Business Review, the Entrepreneur magazine. Um, I realized that the American, let's say, mentality, at least of the entrepreneur, is like um, scale up, make it bigger, make it bigger, so we can actually build the most big, beautiful thing. you know, it's like that. So this is somewhat in a contrast, not only with the Cypriot, because our skill is very small, but also with the European, I think, temperament. Like you've been to Italy. We like this tradition, let's say, these small structures. And what I sense from the things that I get from various places is like maybe the United States will be making this transition from to scale things a little bit down. Like for example, it makes sense to not have the people companies. They are investing now heavily in something called um, nuclear fusion plants. Okay, and it doesn't make sense to make them huge. It
Right.
doesn't. It should be smaller, like the example. Let's say I don't know in from Europe, from France or other nations, and it's way more sustainable. Let's say it's way more manageable. It's not this large scale infrastructure project that comes with all these additional, let's say, restrictions, regulations, and all of these factors in terms of policy, in terms of all of that thing. And I am seeing that move, let's say. At least I'm sensing it. So hopefully I am right in my assessment. Now, another thing, what you said before regarding this ladder, yeah, I fully agree with that. Like, it is the human proclivity to want to climb the ladder and to, let's say, reach out for their dreams, or at least for what they believe is to be the ideal state, let's say. But for those few that they are able to actually reach it and not only utilize that ideal state as a navigated star, let's say, but they actually reach somehow by luck, by pure, let's say, effort, sheer effort, or whatever the case, smarts or whatever. Let's say they are able to achieve that and get to their idealized state. They still realize that there is something more, like the grass on the other side is greener, you know.
Yes.
So it is this human proclivity, let's say, for that. Now, just to take it back to Eastern Orthodoxy, which is my religion, let's say, what we are trying to do, at least in terms of the monastic tradition, that is the more, let's say, the closest, let's say, to the old school, let's say, mentality. It was like try to be to move beyond the passions and not to become like and being fully immersed in apathy. Leaving the passions behind is way it's not that. It's like uh, the passions that used to matter now they don't matter. You know, so it is the same thing like the obstacles. What used to be an obstacle now it's not. And usually we achieve that by the power of prayer, with our faith, with going to church, and getting, let's say, that good fuel, let's say, from there. And that good fuel translates into whatever we do. So you start thinking differently of the ladder. You start thinking it like the ladder of um, the climax of Son John of Climacus. So it's like that.
So what do you think, um, this morning on Clara's live stream, I jump into those live streams because they provoke different thoughts in me. And lately I've been sort of looking at the, correspondence and between AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and the corner. And, the thought occurred to me this morning that, I think that the corner is perhaps something like AA for internet poisoning, because, internet poisoning seems to me related to this human propensity of dissatisfaction. And what that means on the internet, because wealth is so given to that because, oh, I want more money because I'm dissatisfied. And so just more, more, more. The internet is a different kind of more. There are more videos, there are more websites, there's more of everything. I mean, as the internet has grown, it has become both increasingly seemingly exhaustible, but yet increasingly exhausting. I
Mhm.
see that right now with streaming television. You can have all these different streaming services, and there are, used to be you would watch what the programming would give you. Now you have all of this to pick from, and people are exhausted by it. And I wonder if part of the dynamic of whatever it is that's happening in this online space is dealing with that exhaustion, and dealing with that exhaustion through also the intuitive sense that we have that people also are bottomless. And so in that way, people become more interesting than the accumulative noise of the internet. Do you think there's something in that, or what would your thought be in terms of what exactly is going on with this?
Yeah. First of all, this is an extremely interesting discussion and a topic, and I think Clara is trying to also look into investigate into that in terms of addiction and internet addiction, or as you correctly said, internet poisoning, because it is poisoning. And we don't have back in medieval ages, there used to be someone that was testing the food tester to the king. They were testing the food in order to make sure that the king is not running the risk of getting poisoned. Now, in the internet era, there is no food tester, let's say, or content tester there. And what does that mean? It means that because we do not have someone, let's say, to protect us, we are at risk of all those technology giants, and or even the next ones, like, because the next big app might actually endorse TikTok. So you never know what is coming right up in the corner. So the reason that they are growing and growing is because they are engaging in something that personally I really don't like. It's called nudging. Like, how can we push, let's say, towards the user, towards the direction that we want? And this is something that you can also see it. It is a practice that the marketeers use a lot. You can see it also in let's say you enter into a big bookstore. Somehow, magically, let's say, every single individual gets guided to through a maze and arrives at a very particular column with a very specific book. Okay, that this is what nudging is. So they do this unconscious. They take this unconscious algorithmic, even algorithmic steps, let's say, either they insert it into actual physical design, as the case with the brick and mortar library, or within the technological app. So they keep doing that. And they focus on small things that they pass below the filters of the conscious mind. Like these micro actions, like they get us addicted into the scrolling. So it's the actual action of the scrolling. It's as if babe, let's say, gets addicted to the how do you say that thing? I don't remember the
The
word.
nipple
The nipple, yeah,
or the bottle, yeah.
yeah, to the bottle. So it's like that. They place us into a very specific uh, uh, box, and they engage and they allows us to engage in very specific, let's say, constraints. And of course, they have in mind to allow room for the retention rates to go up. So yeah.
And how do you think what it is that we've just sort of, because this was, so I talked to a guy yesterday. It wasn't a recorded conversation. He's a Christian Reformed minister who has been trying to do online church. And he was very curious. A colleague of mine and a friend of mine from college and seminary said, "Oh, you should talk to Paul Vanderklay." So we had this conversation, it was offline, and he basically asked me, how the whole story. So I just gave him the whole story. I've told it many times. And then he says to me, "So it sounds like you didn't have a plan, that you sort of stumbled into this and that you just sort of felt your way around." I said, "Yeah, exactly. The one thing I cared about was I wanted to sort of break down the wall between the church and the outside world so people could have better conversations. That's the one thing I really cared about, hence Estuary. But what we've sort of stumbled upon in this internet space with the Randos conversations and the live streaming and these parasocial relationships that we're having, do you think that the reason that we are deriving a sense of satisfaction or pleasure or freedom from it is because it is in some ways anti-nudge, because there is a degree of randomness to this, maybe?"
Yeah, I wouldn't say randomness plays a role, but what I really believe is that it works because it is organic. It follows that model. So um, personally, when I speak with digital marketeers, I always attack them. I go to them like, you take all this money from your clients and you offer back a minimal value. Like you deliver all these ads to random people, and there is no interaction. You are doing all of that just to spend the budget because you have a big company, let's say, as a client, and you want to deplete the budget on time in order to get the next, let's say, a bundle of budget coming in. If they instead focused on the organic growth model, that's beautiful because it means that something it doesn't need to get nudged or pushed, let's say, down our throat or via the fire hose or whatever. So yeah, and maybe there is also something about this. How Grimm, the general, calls it micro celebrities of TLC. So okay, you have this notion, right? This is a first. It doesn't exist anywhere else. So you have these people that different subgroups, let's say, within the fellowship, they feel more akin to. So we have these small islands, let's say, within TLC in terms of content creators, and we can call them micro celebrities because they function like that. Another term, borrowing once again a term from mimetics, will be the attractors. So it's not like um, those micro celebrities, they only come once every, I don't know, blue moon. For example, in your case, you are the largest of everyone here, okay? And you go and visit the small live streams, the live streams on the small channels. This is, it's not happening. And I'm going all the way back to those figures of merit. There is no way Jordan Peterson will just jump in a live stream. That will never happen. So yeah, I really love that about you because you are. I know you don't like to call yourself like the leader or whatever, but if I had to choose one style of leadership for you, will be this natural one. Like you just follow your heart and you do it. You don't listen to what the you don't get boggled down by the pressures, let's say, of the market. So,
Yeah. Well, and it's strange because on one hand, I can afford to do that because I don't have a big operation. So a bunch of people, Tim Pool did a live stream about his Tim Pool in real life live stream last week or the week before, where he said, "Oh, this might be the last one." And so, because on that one, a bunch of people sent me this. I don't usually watch Tim Pool, but he was talking about how, basically has the growth has to be managed so that it doesn't destroy you.
yeah.
But the management of that growth has costs to it. And so one of the ways to limit those costs is to limit not growth itself necessarily, but the pace of growth. Because it's so often, again, everything that I've done on this, I've learned sort of watching churches. When I've seen churches grow from 5 to 1,000 in 3 years, there's something cool about that. There's something exciting about that, but there's tremendous loss and pain in that. And part of what slow growth affords is often less loss. One of the things that you see with church plants and church planters, so a pastor's going to plant a church, so usually it's him and his family, and then it's a couple other families, and then they usually gather a group of, usually there's actually numbers to all of this, like 20 to 50 people, and that's sort of the kernel. And if the church planter is successful by year 2, they will be over 200. But 60 to 80% of the first 50 people they gather will be gone by the time they hit 200. And what that means is that what happened when they had a group of 30 to 50 is they had a really small, tight-knit group. There was a sense of love. There's a sense of identity. There's a sense of togetherness. And that excitement sort of launched the growth to above 200. But that growth to above 200 destroyed most of what people loved about what they had. And okay, so if your goal is to get above 200, you say that is a cost you are willing to bear. But that remains a cost that actually gets filtered out into the rest of society, because of the 20 or 30 people who left disenchanted from the early group, they take that disenchantment into the rest of their lives. And a good number of the next 200 people that came to the church were the disenchanted people from other plants around them. So what they keep doing is, while there seems to be a net growth, if you're looking through a um, different, frame of analysis, you are magnifying the disenchantment, and we can use different ways, a different metaphor. You are increasing the amount of church pollution that church plants are putting into the environment. And I think part of what has led to these massive deconstructions in society is that church plants have been sort of these things that have been polluting Christianity. And those are, in business terms, you might call them externalities.
Mhm.
And so then you have larger structures like government that begins to say, okay, we are going to add regulation to manage the externalities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And and when actually the bigger problem is not necessarily growth, the big problem is pace. That, and I think actually a good leader, one of the key things a good leader needs to do is work on pace of growth. You will always have the externalities, but you actually want to figure out, well, where exactly is the sweet spot in terms of time and growth?
Yes, yes, beautifully said. Basically, I really believe that a good leader is also a good orchestrator, and it all has to do with pacing. Um, there are many cases, at least in the corporate world, where a startup increased like rapidly, and then it went down because they were not ready to do it. And sometimes it just happens, um, maybe out of pure luck, like somebody made a video, like a review of your company or your restaurant, let's say. No need to go to the technological companies, and there is so much, let's say, people coming in, and that means that you people started coming in because the food was great, but because a lot of them they are coming in now, the quality of the food goes down, and that means that you will get bad reviews. And when you get bad, it's like a negative cycle. And yeah, what you said also about team pool, I also think that what doesn't it's not that it will destroy you, let's say, but it will demotivate you. Like you will reach a point where all the motivation you have gets depleted because the people you invested so much as your team, you don't feel that they have the let's say the stamina or the willingness or the aptitude or the skill set even to support, let's say, the initiative to move to that next, let's say, phase. So yeah, and in those situations, the entrepreneur feels lonely, and it is at those instances that you think, eh, maybe it's not the depth. It's very little, let's say.
Very shallow. It's a mile wide and an inch deep. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happens with church planters. And, it's been interesting where there's this whole meme of YouTube, major successful YouTube channels where they just quit. And of course, you've got 1,000 times the number of little YouTube hopefuls out there that are like, they got to millions of subs and they quit. How could they? Because of course they're looking up the ladder. But and I've seen, you can find exactly the same dynamic in church planters, that they built a church of thousands of people. They got invited to all the right conferences. Their books were selling. Their names were known, and they walk away. and they walk away, or they have an affair. That's sometimes the more common thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and they do it because it's like their hearts are broken because they thought the ladder was God or would fulfill them or something, and they got to the top of the ladder, they're like, and so they fall off the ladder.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've been
Um,
peppering you with questions. I don't know if you had an agenda for this conversation.
no, the only thing I actually wanted to ask you is um, I am planning to after the estuary visit, let's say in Bellingham, I am planning to also visit California, and I'm invited to go to Sacramento to visit Karen Wong. So that will be excellent.
Karen isn't in Sacramento. She's in more towards San Jose.
Yeah, San Jose, yes, sorry, sorry, I made a mistake there. Yeah,
I understand. America is a very big, complicated country. Lots of
yeah,
places.
yeah. So the idea is like if I am gonna make that let's say trip and visit two different states, maybe it makes sense for me to also visit Livingstones. So that was what I wanted to share
Come
with you.
come at 9 a.m. to our estuary meeting and meet the people of that estuary because it was interesting. Part of what's been interesting for me and satisfying too is that like Mark D. Parker had he made an observation about me, and it's sort of weird having people make observations about me to other people and listening in. It's sort of like, reading other people, listening on other people's phone calls in the corner in some ways. But he made the comment that I couldn't have had a large church because, and I think he's right in this, because in some ways a larger church would break my heart because it's it's you cannot satisfyingly love a large number of people. That Dunbar number has a reality. And so I love my little estuary group on Sunday mornings. And each of those people that come to that group are precious. And the reason the group is so valuable for those who come and invest in it is because it's small and they have time to tell their stories. So, you can, maybe, yeah, I'll give you, if you want to get on the Freddie and Paul show, you got to bring Freddie a gift. So
Oh,
if you have a hat or a t-shirt or something that says Cyprus or something like that, if you bring Freddie a hat, he'll usually let you on the show. So there's a pro tip.
yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
but
Thank you.
yeah, come at 9 o'clock in the morning if you're going to come to Sacramento to come to the estuary meeting. I would love for the people to meet you because they are, and most of those people, they don't watch my channel. They don't. We have a few people in the estuary who are in the corner too, and so they bring corner conversations, but most of those conversations don't get picked up in the estuary process. It's all of the personal things that the group, as they've gelled and become a community, those are the things that the group values, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a great pro tip for me. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So yeah, I really like TLC. I really enjoy what is going on over here. Um, I can see myself getting even a bit more involved, if that's even possible.
I don't know how that's possible. You're about as
Yeah,
deep into it as anyone.
yeah. Basically, I have an announcement to make. As we speak now, um, there is over at Chad's channel, the Friday Morning Nameless, there is a premiere of the first episode of an experimental conversation format called 30 Minutes. And I am hosting it along with Afrael. And we had our first guest. The whole idea there is to respect this very strict format of discussing an idea or a concept just for 30 minutes. So it's gonna be me and Afrael inviting someone, initially from TLC, but eventually also folks from outside, let's say, TLC, in order to listen to more opinions, let's say, and not leave it closed down in our little echo chamber. And yeah, personally, I have this idea that I've noticed a gap within the vast ocean of TLC content. There is not a lot of content that is only half hour long. We have these very big 2, 3, 4 hour live streams, but we don't have this short format. So that's my idea there.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. Well,
Thank
maybe there's the commercial that we close this out with. So sound good?
Awesome. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, Ups, that's, I know your name, but I just always think of you as Ups. Because that's what Grim Grizz named you, and we're
Yeah.
wearing his hats. So if anybody's curious about these hats, go to Griswold Grimm's channel and you can get grifted there by him. And he has obviously colonized my head and colonized Ups's head, and with joy, I would have to say. So thank you so much for grabbing a rando slot.
Yeah. 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 I actually tried to pitch it to other people within TLC, like, hey, there is another time slot. But some people they didn't want it wasn't the right timing, let's say, for that.
Yep.
Almost all of them they said they thanked me, of course, and they said to me, maybe it's not the appropriate time, let's say, but they really want to do it. So.
Well,
It's
I'm a firm believer in that. When the time is right, the space will come. I do believe that God manages our steps. I really do believe that. So,
I'm into that.
all right, Ups. You take
Thank
care. It's good talking to you.
thank you.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.